let's actually dig into how you could also have this in your mind. Like you can have utopian and dystopian states, and that can really, really mess with your mental state and your mental health. And again, just thinking about the current situation, the economic hardship, the combination of the virus, the politics, all the tension around the world for more equality. It's like, yeah, I feel like people are in their mind thinking that we're in a dystopia. And unfortunately, it really can lead to a cycle. I mean, if you're feeling like that and then you are thinking about utopian states, i.e., just better than where you are, and then like that doesn't play out, you constantly are going through utopia versus dystopia versus utopia. And that's a cycle that I don't know if everyone's really equipped to deal with. I know I'm not, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk to you about, how I'm coping with things, but yeah, I'd love to get your sense of how people how you think people are doing mentally in this relation.
Yeah, well, I think people are certain, we know mental health issues are on the rise, particularly among young people. We know the impact that, the kind of outrage news cycle and social media is having on all of our psychology. You mentioned earlier in the episode that, we are in a very fortunate position right now where so many of us have food security and have shelter and have our basic needs met, which is not something that a lot of humans throughout history had. So in the externally from a outside third party perspective, it looks like we're doing well, but at the same time there's been this sort of sharp fall off in the meaning that people are able to gather from their own lives. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to kind of hit on here, the difference between the external utopia and dystopia and the internal utopia and dystopia. And I think it first begins with understanding the difference between the external and the outer world as we're laying it out. And I have some examples here that I think kind of will bring it into greater clarity maybe for the audience. So the way that I would think about let's look at a few individuals here that illustrate how an external world can be very different from an internal world. It's like the beautiful young woman who inwardly feels really ugly because she's been poisoned by a years long flood of photoshopped influencers on her social media feed. So outwardly very beautiful. You would think that she thinks she's attractive, but inwardly, she feels ugly. Or it's the bully who, is bigger than and stronger than everyone around, than everyone around him at school, but inwardly feels weak because he has to go home and get bullied by his father. We see that archetype playing out a lot. It could be the billionaire celebrity president that's one of the most powerful, influential people in the world, but inwardly still feels deeply insecure and impotent. And it could be even you or me or any one of our listeners, someone who has had more luxury, had more security, more opportunity than most anyone else in human history, and still feels unfulfilled. So there's a very real difference between what's going on outside of you and what's going on inside of you. And I think living with a greater awareness of that dichotomy allows you to shine, a stronger light on what's going on internally. Because I don't think we pay enough attention to that.
Oh my God, like you're hitting a nerve right now because it's like, yeah, the thing that we want for folks to understand is that, first of all, a lot of us are going through this. So I know I struggle with coping mechanisms. Like, I'm not a perfect person. I have a lot of things I'm working on. And like, part of doing this is, you know, the journey that I'm on in terms of becoming a better person and having more of that utopia inside, right? So it's like, I know I can go from a utopian state of mind to a dystopian state of mind like pretty quickly, especially if my emotions are stronger than my mind in that moment. And like a perfectly normal day can like go sidetracked for a few hours just because of some little random trigger, right? So it's like easy for me to sit here and talk about awareness and, think about it and, have discussions about it. But I mean, I still struggle with doing it, right? And so it's like, I'm a living, breathing, working, work in progress. And I don't actually mind sharing that because it helps me align so that I can look at myself in the mirror tonight and be like, all right, at least I tried to like have today and live today with integrity. So like simple stuff, if my
Mm.
emotions are too high, I'll try to go for a walk or a run as a way to, cope with it. Or like if there's way too many tabs open in my head and I have a lot going on, I'll just, one of my favorite things to do is just create a to-do list and start crossing things off. But what's really helping me slow down is 3D thinking.
Mm. Tell me more.
Dude, so now like when I walk around and like things are popping up in my head, I will literally pop it out in 3D and like visualize it, like walk around it, like talk to it. And it's like asking questions like, are you a good thought? Are you a bad thought? Are you gonna give me a euphoric feeling, or are you gonna bring me down into like some dystopian, depressed feeling? Like literally analyzing it, looking at it, and it's 3D thinking for me. And it's helped me kind of slow down in certain situations and just get a better sense of like how I was reacting, or what actually is going on. So this concept of 3D thinking, I don't know who else is talking about it, but it's certainly helping me.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think it connects back the idea of kind of detaching yourself from your thoughts that we talked about in last episode, and realizing that the thoughts you have minute to minute aren't necessarily like core to your identity. They may just be sort of fleeting words, or images if you're more of a symbolic thinker, that pass through your mind. And I think what you're doing by like literally visualizing it as something discrete from you that you can hold up for analysis is super, super powerful. um, because you're in a very spatial way putting distance between yourself and the thought, um, which is super, super powerful. And I would imagine, you tell me, but I imagine just by virtue of holding it up like that, you feel less emotionally attached to it, even before you've done the analysis. Just by putting a little bit of distance between you and yourself, there's already some letting go there.
Exactly. And so this is just a new thing for me, right? But that's exactly right. Just in that moment of popping it out and like looking at it and actually visualizing it just floating there in space, that's
Yeah.
kind of all you need, man. But you had mentioned earlier around like the person who may not feel good about themselves inside even though they're beautiful outside. And one thing is like bullying and name calling has a lot to do with that. And
Hmm.
so words do matter. And obviously, again, like we can go into examples of how I've learned the hard way, but like the internet, man, it creates this utopian feeling for people, but at the same time it's got some catastrophic and dystopian effects as well. It's like the boundary between your public life and private life is gone. And you can
Hmm.
see, especially in the youngsters, the mental health is suffering. It's trolling, it's cyberbullying, it's poor decision making because someone wants to go viral, so they do something that they may think or had they had good intentions with, but it completely backfires. And next thing you know, you're a 22-year-old and you've literally you have that mark. It's a scarlet letter. And you're going to wear that for the rest of your life, and so you can destroy yourself. So it's just interesting that like people, I don't know how many people are having conversations with folks that are young, and they need to be aware of some of the traps of the quote unquote utopian society of social media. And I think that people know about it, but I think it's something that people need to really just, have reinforce the conversation over and over and over again. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see a deterioration of mental health.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, yeah, I think utopian is I couldn't imagine a more apt word to describe the picture that influencers are trying to paint with their content. Like the tropical scene, and like the beautiful people, and everyone's you know photoshopped to perfection. And that's sort of the brand right now, which obviously is not they're someone may be able to present a utopian version of themselves outwardly. That doesn't mean they're experiencing a utopia or a heaven-like experience inwardly. But people, that's why I think that in the inner world outer world distinction is so important for people to start grasping, because
Love that.
it, it, it really, like, yeah, you look at someone like that and you realize that they may be suffering as much as you or even more than you, and it frees you from the vice of envy and of feeling cursed, you know about your own lot in life. And it empowers you because you realize, like, I do not need those external utopian you know elements in my life to live an inward utopia, an internal utopia, an inner world and utopia, which is like such a freeing thought. You know what I mean? Because you have so little control over the outer world. It's so you don't control how you look. You don't necessarily control your, like, intelligence or how much money you can potentially make. you know Hard work is obviously a variable, but, like, there's caps for certain people, and letting go of the need to exact such control over your outer world and get it to be exactly the way you want. I have exactly the partner I want, I have exactly the job I want, I look exactly the way I want to look. Letting go of that and focusing more on building your own inner utopia is such a faster path to happiness, and not even faster, it's like the only path to happiness, I would argue.
I was gonna say, I think like there's people struggle so much and there's so much suffering that we should all just be focused on our inner worlds and really just refine that, because at the end of the day, your energy is what matters the most. And one thing for me, just I think about my inner world, like to avoid a dystopia, I am lowering my expectations, especially of
I
other people. And I know, like,
totally
many
do.
people are going to be like, well, I already knew that. And it's like, oh yeah, that's great. But if anything, like the expectation should just be placed on myself. Like,
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah,
still going to have expectations, but they're just going to be placed on myself. I'm not going to really expect much from other people. And that also is a little bit more freeing in terms of utopia versus dystopia.
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, like the second you uh, one of the things that I was reading in a book on Jungian psychology recently was, like, everyone has that thing that they want out of the world. Like, they either want to be loved or want to be admired or respected or feared. Everyone kind of has that relationship with the world that they want consummated. And if you let go of whatever that you're pining for so deeply, then the feeling you want will be returned to you. Like, if you want your whole life, you just want power over people, power over people, power over people. The second you're like, I don't care anymore about having power over people, then you will feel more powerful than you've ever felt. You know?